What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for January 31st, 2023. It's Tuesday. Time for a little positive, upbeat message. And this one I'm going to steal from somebody else I listened to, Dave Sherapan. He's part of a show I listen to, The Bostonian versus the Book, him and Matt Perrault. Be sure to go check them out. It's actually a really good show. Talk a little bit about life, sports gambling. But he said something, and I forget what the context or whatever was, but he said a quote that really, really struck me. And I think, especially with trying to grow this podcast, really stuck with me. Always forward, but never straight. And just thinking about that, you're absolutely right. Sometimes you're going to have to go this way, that, maybe take a step, two steps this way, whatever. But as long as you're moving forward and continuing where you want to go, that's what we want to do in life. So there is your little motivation for today. And I think that's very apropos for what this is. This is a Philly-based podcast. And with that Eagles season this year, they have always moved forward. It may have gone the roundabout way sometimes, but they stayed moving forward. The goal was the entire time to get to the Super Bowl, and look, here we are. So, staying with the Eagles, the big story that has been coming out is, and I'm sure we're going to see a lot of these narratives as the next couple of weeks play on, but is the whole, oh, well, Philly didn't want Jalen Hurts, blah, 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 this, that. And while that somewhat is slightly true, I think it's a lot of that is taken out of context, because if you think back to when they drafted him in 2020, it wasn't anything specific against Jalen Hurts. It was the fact they had just given Carson Wentz that large contract and basically went all in, and we kind of already all knew that his ego was a little fragile to begin with because of the whole way the whole Nick Foles thing played out with the Super Bowl and everything. So as that narrative is going to come up over the next 2 weeks, remember, they're not going to tell you that part of the story because it doesn't sell and it's not interesting. But that's the little thing. But it's a key piece of the story to leave out. Like, it wasn't like, oh my God, I can't believe they drafted Jalen Hurts. He sucks. It was more, what the hell are you doing? We just signed this our quarterback to a long-term deal. You know, he kind of is a little bit in his emotions anyway and has that fragile ego. So, and ultimately, here we are. So, I mean, obviously it worked out. I'm so glad that everything played out the way it was. But just something to keep in mind as that narrative is going to come up a few times, that it's not that, and even like compare it somewhat to booing Donovan McNabb when they drafted him. And again, I don't think anybody was booing Donovan per se. They were booing the fact that it wasn't Ricky Williams. So, and again, you can twist the facts around any way you want to make it fit your narrative. But in this case, keep in mind that it wasn't like, son of a bitch, we just drafted Jalen Hurts. It was, son of a bitch, we just signed our franchise quarterback to a long-term hefty deal. Why are you bringing in somebody so early? So just as we go, and there's going to be a lot of that over the next 2 weeks, but I wanted to address that. We're going to have an Eagles story every day for the next 2 weeks, but that was the story for today. Just keep that in mind. And again, always straight, or always forward, never straight. Just keep moving. Sixers lost a tough one, and I mean that is about as bad of a loss as you can get, having a 21-point lead and then losing by 10 to the Magic. Now, the Magic are a young team. They've actually had Boston's number this year too. So in that regard, it's kind of like, all right, what are they doing down there in Orlando? But you have a 21-point lead. You can't be losing that game. So the winning streak is snapped at 7 games, but let's just go on another one. I have a feeling the next game we're not going to see Joe. He's probably going to rest, which is fine. I mean, at this point, he's been balling, so give him a day off. But this day in Philly sports history, we're going to take it back to 2002, and this is the day that Harry Kalas, yes, Harry the K, was named the Ford C. Frick Award winner, which basically is the award they give to announcers that is they're not technically Hall of Famers, but they get their name on a plaque in the Hall of Fame. So it's like the highest honor you can get as a broadcaster. Specifically, it's for the commitment to excellence, quality of broadcasting abilities, reverence within the game, popularity with the fans, and recognitions by peers. So basically, he's damn good at his job, or he was damn good, so they recognized him. So while he's not officially a Hall of Famer, and I put in the air quotes up for those of you not watching on YouTube, he's a Hall of Famer. And to me, and I'll get into that, but originally, and I always forget this, he originally broke in with the Astros, which is ironic because his son is one of the announcers for the Astros now, and that was a big story during the World Series. But way back in '65, he basically announced he announced the first game at the Astrodome, and then the Phillies hired him to replace Bill Campbell, who retired, who in 1971, who was like a fan favorite. And I remember listening to him somewhat on WIP as a kid. Just like basically at one point, I think he announced for almost all the major teams or all the pro teams in Philly. I remember him doing a lot of Big Five basketball games, but nonetheless, he was very, very popular. So Harry came in, and he was not necessarily well respected and loved by the Philly fans because, again, I'd have to go back and research it, but I don't know if necessarily Bill Campbell retired, he didn't get his contract renewed, and they wanted to bring in somebody young. But obviously, he was the master of ceremonies, the opening of the vet, called the first game there. And obviously, over the years, to say he grew on us as Philly fans, that's like the grossest understatement you can have. Like, obviously, he is beloved beyond belief here in Philly. He also was the voice for NFL Films, so he used to do a lot of like those weekly highlight shows, and it was always like, yeah, that's my baseball announcer. He also called the games for Westwood One's radio coverage, so there were times like you could hear him on the radio, listening to games, which was pretty cool. But for me, he was like the soundtrack of summer for me. And for some reason, I guess the Cubs were in their division and didn't play night games till later on. But I just remember there being a lot more day baseball games when I was a kid. But just listening to him and Richie Ashburn kind of just takes me back to being a kid, summer vacation, watching, listening, whatever it could be with baseball. Having people over, my parents having people over, having the Phillies game on in the background, just like brings me back to like that nostalgia, brings me back to those times. Obviously, they still do High Hopes which is one of my favorite things after a Phillies win, have him sing High Hopes. They do the out of here call when a home run. And I mean, you can take your pick. What call is your favorite all time Harry Kalas call? I'll let you guys comment. Let me know. Text me. Leave a comment here. For me, I think it was my favorite call was probably when they won the division in '93 when he goes on to this band of throwbacks. There's a poor imitation, by the way. That and the way he said Mickey Morandini. And I think that's probably up there with everybody's. Mickey Morandini. But, I mean, like I said, big part of just memories when I was a kid in the summertime, watching the Phils, listening on the radio. Definitely cried when he died. I haven't done that for a lot of athletes, but for me, because it was just what it represented and what it meant with, like, my grandparents being there, aunts and uncles, my parents, my brother, just like I said, the soundtrack to summer almost. But let me know what your favorite Harry Kalas call is. You could go on all day for hours just talking about Harry Kalas calls. But on this day in 2002, he was named the Ford C. Frick Award winner, which essentially made him a Hall of Famer, while not officially a Hall of Famer, just because the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame is very stuffy when it comes to things like that. But go have yourselves a Tuesday, and until next time, I'll see you when I see you.